some of my other music clubs that I love are, I mentioned the Maple Leaf because we went there, Preservation Hall, DBA is great. And then, my band mates and I in Galactic, we actually purchased Tipitinas in 2018. And Tips is one of the most iconic New Orleans venues
Yeah.
uh, that opened in 1977. So that's quite an honor and quite a journey taking on one of the most iconic music venues in New Orleans and, dare I say, in the country. Because all of our New Orleans heroes played there, starting with Professor Longhair, James Booker, the Neville Brothers, the Meters, Dr. John, Alan Toussaint. The list goes on and on and on. And then also, Tips was one of the places, it holds about 800 people. So it was one of the places that a lot of rock bands would play their first time through New Orleans.
Mm.
So bands like Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Rage Against the Machine,
Ooh.
all played there. And so, I was there to see Pearl Jam when they played, and Bad Brains and Fishbone. So it's a very diverse kind of different types of music that have played Tips over the years. So we can have rock bands, but then you can also, over COVID we started doing seated shows,
Hmm.
and we had Preservation Hall come and play now a couple of times, and we'll do seated shows with Press Hall, Nicholas Payton, all kinds of different. I've played there with my trio, with my piano trio, with tables and chairs and cocktail service, and then you can blow it out and have killer rock bands there as well. And tomorrow night we're gonna have the Wood Brothers with Chris Wood, who I love, from Medeski Martin Wood. He was on my second record with me, so I'm gonna go see them tomorrow night.
Now, is that
So,
is that normal for the Preservation Hall band to play outside of Press Hall?
not in New Orleans.
I was gonna say
Not in
that
New Orleans,
seems.
and we've been planning on it for years, or talking about it for years, and so we finally have been doing it, and it's awesome. But they do tour. There's a Preservation Hall touring band, and they play all kinds of places, all kinds of festivals. But in New Orleans, they usually always play Preservation Hall.
Mhm.
But now we're getting them over at Tips occasionally, which is amazing.
So was Tips up for sale when you guys went to go buy it, or did you just think about it and just make an offer that the current owners would
No,
refuse?
it wasn't up for sale, and we wound up doing a festival with the previous owner.
Hmm.
And then when we were doing that, we had a lot of meetings, and our manager would come fly into town, and the previous owner, Roland von Kernatowski, would sometimes pick up our manager from the airport, sometimes drop him off at the airport. And our manager just started saying, like, getting out of the car and like hanging up, from phone calls, hey, if you ever think about selling Tips, let us know. And he wasn't really a music guy. And so we had played 6 to 8 times a year for 20 years by the time that we bought it.
Hmm.
So he, when it came time, he started thinking about selling it. And then we were pretty much the only band he really knew about. And we had been telling him, when you're ready to sell, let us know. So eventually he let us know he was ready to sell. And then, long story short, it took us about 2 years to negotiate. He started off wanting to sell us like 49%. And eventually it got to where he wanted to sell the whole thing.
Hmm.
And so we own the business, the building, and the brand.
Was there any like nervousness in the sense that you have been saying whenever it's available, we want to buy it, and then it finally comes to fruition, and it's like, oh, we have to do this now? Was there any like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have been so forward about it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe for some of the guys, but for me, I grew up here in New Orleans, and Tipitina's is, as Ivan Neville likes to say, who Ivan's one of my good friends, he says, Tipitina is the best way to describe Tipitina is it's the Madison Square Garden of New Orleans. so, so growing up in New Orleans, I aspired to play there and then aspired to headline there. And after headlining, twice during Jazz Fest, twice during Mardi Gras, New Year's Eve, Halloween, and several other, holidays throughout the year, doing that for 20 years, we as a band started to joke, well, when we owned Tipitinas. So, it was a very gradual thing, but then you start to like think it, believe it, and then you're like, well, I guess it's possible. And I mean, somebody has to take care of it. We don't think of ourselves as owning it as much as we think of being the current caretakers of our favorite venue and a lot of other people's favorite venues. So I get more people coming up to me now, like on the street or at shows, saying, oh my God, can I give you a hug? Thank you for taking care of Tipitinas. Thank you for saving Tipitinas. Thank you for prolonging, our favorite place. Because anybody who's been in New Orleans usually comes to Tipitinas and it quickly becomes one of your favorite places. So I get more of that now than, oh my goodness, that was a great show. Or, oh my goodness, I love the new record you just put out. So, because, only so many people are going to like your record, but so many people, Tipitinas can host so many different kinds of music, as we just discussed. So you got people who come there for the rock, or people who come there for Preservation Hall, or people who come there. Now we're doing comedy shows too. So there's only so many people in the world who like funk music. So
the cool
you got,
people.
What's that?
The cool people. It's the cool people of the world.
Of course. But you over the course of time, you got people who love, all kinds of different music. And then those people come up and say, man, thank you for what y'all are doing at Tips.
Mm-hmm. Now, so you said you bought it in 2018. So then you have 2 years of just normal operation, and then boom, the pandemic hits. How'd you guys adjust to having to, I know you said you did the cocktail hours, but how long of a period were you guys like totally shut down? And then how are you guys scrambling to be able to, because that's not easy. I know like a million places in New York, like restaurants, one of the most famous barbershops in New York City went under for a minute during the pandemic. So like, that's not just a feat to breeze by.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie. That was the scariest thing I've ever been through.